Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you here. This is our third session of our Community of Practice series. And today we are going to be talking about designing a student-centered action. So our mission as grad partners is to really support communities to use high quality student success systems so that schools are empowered to graduate all students ready and prepared for the future. We are a consortium of 9 organizations with decades of experience in the education field. We have been supporting school districts, schools, and state education departments with early warning indicators, so for example, on track, MTSS, attendance team, college readiness, and a lot of or many student support systems really to support schools around improvement work. So, what we are going to do today, we are going to explore some practical ways to design an action. We'll be talking about how to create an action that is used not just to act, but also centers our students. And we will also walk you through some concrete strategies where you can design, test, and refine some solutions. So approaches that are just not theoretical, but like that you can actually implement tomorrow. And because learning is always fun in community, that's my belief, this space is designed to be collaborative. So please feel free to share insights, thoughts, feelings in the chat as we go through our session today. Our facilitation team for today is myself. I'm Jasmine Furman, data strategist at NCS, and Andrea Cortez. So you can see her right or left side of the screen. She's one of our amazing transformation coach at the Network for College Success. And we're really excited to have you here. So we also want to see and hear where you're coming from. So in the chat, can you please share your name, organization, and where you're located? We tend to have people all across the nation. So tell us where you're at. And hopefully it's beautiful today. Today is the first day of spring, and it's my favorite day of the year. Well, thank you. Thank you all for sharing and for being with us today.
Great to see some familiar faces as well as new faces. Here in this community, we also have some agreements that we want to share with you all that guide the culture that we're building here in this team and also the values that we believe in. We love to hear your stories, so we want to hear them. We want to share your stories, please, but also share your airtime. This work that we're doing is deep work, and so we might not get to a resolution right away. So please be open to accepting non-closure. We want to make sure that ideas that are created in this community can leave, but specific stories and details stay within here. And we're wanting to share to learn. We're here to learn from each other and to hear each other's stories as well as share our stories. And most importantly, make room for joy because learning is fun. So, Jasmine will be dropping our activity guide for today. In our activity guide, you will be able to have space for notes. You can follow along with us in there as well. And there is at the bottom the Student Success Team Reflection and Action Planning tool, which has a lot of great resources and guidance to support you and your team in the continual improvement of your success teams. So this has a plethora of resources and protocols for you all to use once you leave this space. Our learning arc for 2025. In January, we started the year in talking about data and specifically setting the stage for data conversations. Data is only as good as the learning that supports it. So we practiced engaging in some of those data conversations through a data review. In February, we zoned in on uncovering root causes because when we engage in root cause analysis, it gives us a really great picture and understanding, a more robust understanding of what our data is telling us. And we asked you all for us to lean into the student co-design aspect of the student success framework and engage in some root cause analysis with students, particularly students who your data was showing were furthest from opportunity. Today, we'll be designing some strategic student-centered actions. So, what did our data conversations tell us? What did our root cause analysis tell us? And now, how do we design actions based off of those things? Then, when
Mhm.
we come back in April, we'll be talking all about reflection. So, our student success systems, the root cause analysis that we all engaged in was again, we were asking you all to get in collaboration and in dialogue with students so that way we can learn more about their experiences. Those experiences are what fuel this student success system. Those student experiences, understanding those help us tell a more robust story of our data, as well as when we center student experiences, it helps us calibrate on what a student-centered mindset means. It helps the adults calibrate on what that is because we all may be coming to our success teams with different concepts of what being student-centered and having a student-centered mindset is. Also, those understanding our students' experiences helps us deepen our relationships with them. And also, when we understand student experiences, we're able to better activate student agency, but also educator agency. And at the center of all of that are our improvement actions. They should be co-created with teachers, students, families, and communities, which is what we'll be discussing today. So designing strategic student-centered actions. We'll be guiding you through either designing or refining some actions that you all are doing that lead to success for all students so that they receive the supports that they need. Y'all are coming to us with a plethora of knowledge and experiences. It's March, it's springtime, we're coming to the end of the school year. So I'm sure that you all have been doing a lot of amazing things, and we want to activate and work off of that prior knowledge that you're coming to us with. So we're going to send you into some pair conversations right now. Think about the school year and the things that you've done, no matter what level of education you're working with, if you're working directly with students, if you're working with the teachers and the adults at the district level or at another level, or if you're a community organization, you all have been doing a lot of work to support student success. So, what is an action or an intervention you are currently trying or thinking about trying? We're going to send you into some pairs for 5 minutes to talk about that. In your activity guide, there's a space for you all to take notes because we will be referring back to this action or intervention that you're thinking about or trying throughout our time together today. So Megan will be sending you out into some breakout rooms.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Oh, everyone's smiling. So glad that it was good conversation. That's awesome. So I want you to hold on to that action or intervention because we are going to kind of inspect it a little bit more throughout the session. So when we talk about a student-centered action, we are talking about not just like creating a plan, but like building a process that's responsive to the needs of our students. So that means like we want to be using real-time evidence-based and data to inform our decisions rather than make assumptions. I know it's really hard to do, but we gotta work on it. But that's why we have data so that it can help us kind of show us where we're at before we jump to conclusions about what's going on. It also means shifting the focus away from what's easiest for us, the adults, to really focusing and ensuring on what we need to support our students and to center our students around our work. And we know that every school community is different. So you want to think of an approach or action that is something that can be adapted in many different contexts or many different class settings. And I think the most important thing about designing a student-centered action is that it shouldn't be done in isolation. It should be co-designed with students, teachers, and in community. So those are the technical elements that we think about when we are designing an action. So I want you to take a moment and go back to the action or intervention that you were just talking about with your partner. How aligned is your action with these design elements? And I'll give you a minute to think about that. You can just write that in your activity guide. And if you feel called to, you can drop some input in the chat.
All right. Well, I'm going to Jasmine walked us through, like she mentioned, like the technical aspects of designing student-centered actions. Now I'm going to take us through some of the more adaptive elements of student-centered actions or like mindsets that we have. Oh, we've got something in the chat. How we wrestle most with how to co-design with
Mhm.
students. We have access to teachers and community members but don't always have students at the table. That is a reality. Sometimes the way our schools were set up were before we really were conscious of how important having students at the table is. So we are having to create those new ways of doing and being into our spaces. And so I think if that is where you feel like you feel the most stuck, it's really important to center that as we're going through our design process today. So again, some of the mindsets that we want to take on when designing these student-centered actions, these mindsets are like the secret sauce, what helps set this apart from the work that we're doing from like maybe other work that you've done in the past. We want to make sure as adults that we're building on students' strengths and assets. Our students come to us with a plethora of gifts, prior knowledge, or cultural richness. And so we want to make sure that we're acknowledging those things and building off of those gifts that students come to us with. They're not empty cups that we need to fill. They're full cups, and it may take us as adults sometimes letting go of old mindsets to recognize that those are actually gifts and not barriers. So that takes us to our second mindset of student-centered action, which is acknowledging and accepting that our change in or a change in our practice may mean letting go of old habits and mindsets. When thinking about engaging in these student-centered actions, we may feel the urge to default to the old ways of maybe making decisions. I think our friends over in or Tenley mentioned something that's a reality of like students are there's no the spaces aren't created for students to organically be at the table. And so to create those spaces, we have to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone, and reflect on our decision making. Are we making this decision because it's the most convenient for us as adults, or are we making decisions because they're student centered? The third mindset that we want to talk about today is honoring communication with students and school community. In the past, sometimes our communication with students and school community has been one way. And we reach out to parents and families and communities when we need something from them, we need some information, or when we bring them into our school buildings, it's to give them information. And so are reframing how we communicate with students and families for it to be reciprocal. Also, sharing feedback with the students and school communities and welcoming feedback from our students and our school communities is necessary too. So we're going to take another moment for some reflection. How aligned are these mindsets or this adaptive work to the action that you had already identified earlier? So in your activity guide, there's more note-taking space, or if you just want to think about it yourselves, feel free to do so. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take you through designing and refining your actions so that they align with these technical and adaptive elements that Jasmine and I had surfaced. Here on this slide, we have for you all something called the impact effort matrix. On the y-axis of the impact effort matrix, it takes us through things that are high impact, so things that will get us the results that we want in terms of student outcomes and experiences, and then things that are low impact, that don't necessarily support outcomes or experiences. On the x-axis, we have things that are more low effort to the left side, and so think about things that don't take many resources. When we talk about resources, we're thinking about not just monetary resources, we're also thinking about people power. We're thinking about your time as educators. That is also a resource, which often gets overlooked, but that is something that's really important. So on the left-hand side of this matrix is things that don't take as many resources, that are quick to do, and the things that are right on the right-hand side are things that are high effort, take a lot of resources. Why do we use this impact effort matrix? We're using it because it helps us prioritize actions and routines that are small and manageable. The upper left-hand quadrant, which are things that are high impact, so it gets us the results that we want, but are low effort, they don't take much resources. That's the sweet spot, the quick wins. That's where we want to be. When we're talking about refining our systems, we're talking about little small adaptable things that you can try to give us information more quickly about if it's working. So quadrant one, that's where we want to be. That's the space. Um, when we're looking at things that are high impact and high effort, that is box number two. Those are things that we consider major projects. Those things, I'm not saying that they're not important, but for the purpose of refining our systems, those major projects don't tell us much about our system itself. So while they may be great things, they're more long-term planning, things that take long-term planning and more effort. So those are not the things that we're really focusing on today. We're again focusing on the quick wins. In quadrant three, those are things that are low effort and low impact. We don't really want to think about spending our time on things that aren't going to get us the results that we want. And then same thing on the right-hand side in quadrant number four, high effort. We're putting lots of resources into those things, but they're not getting us the results that we want. So when we focus on our quick wins, again, it helps us build our knowledge about what works in our system and why. It helps us refine actions and routines. We I don't want us to throw away really great ideas just because it didn't work perfectly the first time. We want to hold on to those ideas and say, what about the way that this was implemented? Could I do differently? There's always a lot of great ideas that we try, and sometimes we just move and we don't spend enough time slowing down and acknowledging why did it work? Why didn't it work? Also, when we engage in learning about these quick wins, these small actions, these routines, it builds community of our team by learning together. So we engage in that learning and we do all of that work and we are able to calibrate on what is a good action to take. So here in Chicago, which is where I'm at right now, we guided a group of schools, a school that we've been working with for a really long time through designing an action. We gave them this template and we asked them as teams, this team, what they did first is that they reviewed ninth grade data, student GPA data, attendance data, they engaged in empathy interviews, and they reviewed those empathy interview results together. Then they engaged in that root cause analysis that we were talking about earlier. And through their root cause analysis, they identified that students' sense of belonging, particularly their sense of belonging as learners, is a root cause as to why students weren't engaging in the class or weren't getting the grades that the teachers were hoping for. So after this team engaged in that data review, that data conversation, and that root cause analysis, this is the design, the action that they designed. They decided to create a reflective exit ritual in their class. The question that they were asking students is, what is an example of something you found valuable in today's lesson? To get students comfortable with asking or responding to these reflective questions, what they did first is they had students think about their responses individually. After they did that individually, then the students were partnered with someone that they were friends with in the classroom, someone that they already had rapport with. Then, to strengthen peer-to-peer relationships, the third round of this process, what they did is that they were partnered with someone new, someone they didn't typically talk to in class. Now, for students to not get bored of this routine in the classroom, they did some switch ups. For 1 week, they did it in the English classes. Then the following week, they did it in the math class. So this was also for students to not get bored of the routine, but also for all teachers to be able to engage in learning from students' reflections. So how were students involved in this process? They were sharing feedback with the teachers. And that feedback with the teachers let the teachers know how the teachers can incorporate what students like, what resonated with students as learners into their regular classroom. Um, when they did that, they were thinking it's going to make our classrooms more inclusive of these individual students that we have in this group. Then we had teachers engage in some predictions. What do you think is going to happen as a result of your action, your intervention? And this group of teachers thought that students would participate more in class, that they would be showing up to class more often or on and or on time, and they would complete projects and homework more regularly. They identified what success would look like for them. So for success for this group of teachers is that students felt more of a sense of belonging in the class. That success will look like higher grades and higher attendance. And they would be collecting data. They would be looking at their student grades, student attendance, and then once a month they would ask students a really quick survey about how they're feeling about their sense of belonging in the class. And then finally, the part that they was most connected to them, I think, in this piece was talking about what they hope to learn. So these teachers hope to learn the different types of learners, learning preferences that the students have in their classroom. So they were getting to know students on a social level, but they also wanted to learn about students at an academic level. And these teachers also hope to become more agile in their teaching as a result of engaging in this change idea. So again, these actions that we're designing, they help us not only learn about students, but they also help us learn about ourselves as educators.
All right. Thank you, Andrea, for that amazing example. You are now going to have an opportunity to practice using the same template that Andrea just walked us through, based on the intervention or action that you have shared with us today or with your partner. So, just a couple of things before you have some time to reflect on your action. You want to think about it and make sure that it's easy, keep it simple. Going back to the matrix, is it low effort? Is it something that's going to give us a quick win? It's something that can be adapted in a variety of different class setting. Can you build a routine around it? It's something that you can do weekly, daily, so that you can collect more data and quicker data as you go along with it. And also, is it authentic? Are you co-designing that action intervention with students and building on their assets? So these are some things that we want you to hold as you are building your own student center action. Any questions before we give you some time to do that? And you should have the template in your activity guide. All right, so this is a template. We'll cue some music to just help get the brain flowing, and we'll be back soon.
Also, Jazz and I are here, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to come off mute or send us a message in the chat to the
Yes,
whole group or to individually.
absolutely. Thank you. So let's put a comma on that thought. And I just want you to know that think of this as a starting point. You may not get through all of this today, and that's okay. The goal is really to begin shaping the idea and identifying areas of growth or strength, and take the time to explore and adjust, and reflect on what you need. I think Andrea did a great job explaining what this action can look like, and so you can definitely refer to the example to as you're building out your plan. I something else someone mentioned in the chat. This is a different, if you are doing continuous improvement, a different way to like do a PDSA cycle or run any type of action reflection cycle. So just another way, if those feel a little bit too technical, this is a way that you can also kind of do that work in a more reflective manner. So now you guys are going to have, like I said, learning is so much more fun in community. So you're going to go into trios, and I want you to focus on two things, just explaining your thinking. What was your action? What was your thinking behind your answers to any of the questions that were in the template? And identifying some areas for feedback. So if you have something that you specifically would want to kind of have a thought partnership around, feel free to share that with your partner. And make sure it's going to be in trios. You guys are going to have about 15 minutes in that breakout room. So make sure that each one has equal airtime, so about 5 minutes per person. And again, this space is for collaboration, so use your partner to help you refine and strengthen your approach. Any questions before we send you off?
All right. I hope you enjoyed your time together, learning from each other, learning with each other. I hope it was fun and full of joy, just like our community agreement. Um, Before we go into sharing in the chat of things like main takeaways or possible next steps, I also want to share and make explicit like all the tools that we're sharing with you today are things that you can bring back to your team spaces. It is the big concepts, the actions you're designing, and it's also these tools that we're sharing with you all today. So, you just had your conversations about your actions, you got thought partnership. In the chat, please. What is a main takeaway from today or possible next step you are considering?
Feel free to maybe do a waterfall chat.
Oh, yeah.
I like those.
Type your things.
Yes.
And then 3, 2, 1, press enter and let's see all of those waterfall jets.
Well, water is trickling. Oh, that's okay. Totally okay. Well, as you're still thinking about your action, oh, student voice can come through in a lot of different ways. Absolutely. Well, as those keep trickling in, we just wanted to wrap it up. Oh, considering, sorry, now I'm reading. Yes,
Yeah.
please consider bringing these tools back to your team.
Ooh, attendance solutions with students co-created. That's
Ooh,
great
yeah,
idea.
I love that. All right. Well, before we wrap it up, we want to give you some quick tips. So keep it simple. I think any action that we take sometimes can feel very overwhelming. So the simpler we can be, for example, I'm just going to use this template with my team. I'm going to use this template with my teacher. That is a simple thing that you can do. So remember just to keep it simple. Second, make sure that you're collecting data because we want to make sure that we learn if it's working or not. And so the best way to do that is to collect some data around it. And make sure the other thing is to jot down your learning. So as you're collecting the data, as you're having these conversations, as you're doing things, reflect along the way. What are you learning as you go? What are you seeing, observing? Just jot down all those things because that is also data that's going to help you learn more about that action. And finally, and I think the most important one, which we're going to talk about a lot in our next session in April, is reflection is key. So make sure that in order to sustain success, you want to make sure that are reflecting on what you're doing, and that you're doing that with your team, with your students, with your teachers, because not only are you being reflective of what's going on, you're including them and collaborating with them in that reflection. And that's just going to really strengthen your relationship and also get you guys all around a common goal. So, this is some additional tips that we want to offer you as you go off into the world and continue doing your amazing things. And with that, we want to thank you for joining us. Please, we're going to drop in the chat the feedback form for today that I am dropping right now. Please take a moment to share your feedback. We ourselves are do this reflective process and we take these reflections, we reflect, not only we consider them, but we, take them into account as we continue to plan for our next session. So please take a moment to give us your input on today's session. And as you do that, we look forward to seeing you in April. April will be our last session. We will be doing reflect, which I mentioned earlier, to refine and sustain success. And it will be a great one as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our newsletter for the latest details around our community of practice, and you can check us out on X at GRAD Partners. Anything else, Andrea?
Just enjoy the spring day. If you are going on to spring break soon, please enjoy the full week. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.